Everyone loves conspiracy theories, and so rather than be left out of the fun, I thought I'd come up with my own original conspiracy theory. And I can't prove this, and I don't know whether it's true, and I don't think it really matters, but I thought it would be particularly shocking and interesting to people in the 9/11 truth movement. First, I need to go over some general background. So in the events leading up to war in Iraq, there's a whole range of assertions, and some of them are fairly well accepted and non-controversial, and others are very controversial. The most well-accepted assertions are that there were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and that there was no Al-Qaeda-Hussein connection. And it's also fairly well accepted at this point that the Bush administration pushed this angle in order to get America to go to war under false pretenses. Unfortunately, the American public hasn't really focused on that issue, which can be proven and which should have led to impeachment proceedings. Many people in Congress would have agreed that that could be proven. Many people in the media would have agreed that that can be proven. In fact, the majority of people would have agreed that you could prove we were taken to war under false pretenses. But there really wasn't a lot of public focus on this issue. Instead, people often tended to focus on things which were less provable. So now I'll move down the spectrum of things which are less provable. The next thing would be the anthrax attack. Now, in the anthrax attack, the scientific community has consistently proven the government version of the story to be incorrect and consistently forced the government to change the version of the story which is presented. First, the government claimed that the anthrax came from overseas terrorists, and scientists proved that that strain of anthrax had come from a government lab. So then the government story changed, and it was stated that the strain came from a government lab, but it had been stolen many decades earlier. And then scientists conducted genetic testing and proved that that strain of anthrax had only been stolen very recently from the government lab. So then the government changed its story again and said that the strain was stolen recently by a rogue government scientist who released it, and they charged one particular scientist. And that scientist put up a defense, and the government dropped its case and paid several $1,000,000 to the scientist for charging him incorrectly. So then the government focused on a different rogue scientist who committed suicide, and the case was dropped. Consistently, the scientific community has claimed that the government's version of the anthrax story was incorrect, and consistently the scientific community has been able to force the government to change their official story. The mainline media has consistently questioned the government's version of the anthrax attack. In fact, the Wall Street Journal ran an editorial a couple months ago stating that they didn't believe the government's official version of the anthrax attack. And many people in Congress don't seem to agree with the government's official version of the anthrax attack. But unfortunately, again, there's not a lot of focus on this issue because people have focused on things which were even less provable. Not that the anthrax attack really matters one way or the other. If you look into it, there's a lot of other evidence which I haven't gone into, but I'm just trying to present the spectrum of things which are provable versus unprovable. Most provable, war under false pretenses in Iraq. Second most provable, anthrax attack. It's still controversial, but you've at least got more evidence. You've got many people in the media, most people in the scientific community, most experts are behind you. Now we move into the things which are least provable. Now, the most controversial claims regarding the events leading up to war in Iraq revolve around false flag attacks on the Pentagon and the Twin Towers. And the most controversial aspect of those claims is the individuals who claim that there was a controlled demolition of the Twin Towers. And I state that those are the most controversial because you basically have no structural engineers who support that theory. Very few people in the technical community support that theory, and there aren't many independent journalists who seem to support that theory either. So whether or not you think it's true, I think you have to admit that that's the most controversial claim and the most difficult for the average American or the average person with a technical background to support. It's also a very divisive claim for many people to hear, and as soon as they hear it, they immediately tune out any other claims regarding events leading up to war in Iraq. So for all the people out there that like to consider conspiracy theories and are getting tired of the same old conspiracy theories, here's a new one that you haven't considered before. And this is my own original conspiracy theory, and I don't know if it can be proven or not. I don't even know myself if it's true or not, and I don't think it really matters because I like to focus on things that can be proven and things you can adapt to. But if you like to consider conspiracy theories, here's a new one for you. One of the largest proven government conspiracies in history was called Project Mockingbird, and it was a project of disinformation run by the CIA. It lasted for over 30 years, from the 1940s up until the 1970s. And it wasn't just a small program, it had a budget of over $200 million a year in the 1970s. And the aim of Project Mockingbird was to spread disinformation domestically and abroad through media outlets, and basically to fractionalize opposition by spreading false stories. So consider that something like Project Mockingbird could still exist today, and ask yourself, which movement has done the most damage in diverting public attention away from the proven crimes of the administration and focusing attention on the most divisive and most difficult to prove potential crimes of the administration? Which group of people has done the best job of diverting attention away from everything which can be proven or everything which is supported by experts, and they've consistently focused on the issues which are most likely to alienate the average American? Who's behind this constant focus in the 9/11 truth movement on the most difficult to prove and contentious and divisive allegations? Why hasn't this movement focused on the things which are provable? Why hasn't the American public been able to focus on the fact that we were taken into war under false pretenses and that impeachment proceedings should have begun 5 or 6 years ago? Why has everything revolved around the most difficult to prove allegations? Is there someone behind this?